One negotiation. No war, no rebellion, no cosmic battle between good and evil, just a legal argument made before the throne of God after the flood. And it is the only reason evil spirits are still on earth today. After the flood, Noah prayed that God would bind every evil spirit on earth. The Nephilim were dead, their bodies destroyed by the waters, but their spirits were still here, roaming the earth, afflicting his grandchildren, corrupting them, pulling them toward destruction. And Noah said, "Bind them all, every single one." And God agreed. He gave the command. The angels moved to carry it out. But before all of them could be taken, one stepped forward. He came before God and made an argument. He presented a case for why a portion of the evil spirits should remain active on earth. And what he said was compelling enough that God stopped the binding, accepted the terms, and left 1/10 of all evil spirits free under this figure's personal command. This negotiation is recorded in a book found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It is the moment that explains why evil spirits still walk the earth. It answers a question Christianity has never fully resolved. Who exactly is Satan? And the answer the oldest texts give is not the one you were taught. The figure who stepped forward is named Mastema. His name comes from the Hebrew root meaning hostility or enmity. He is not a watcher. He is not a fallen angel imprisoned under stone. He is the chief of the evil spirits, the disembodied souls of the dead Nephilim, the ones who lost their bodies in the flood and have been roaming the earth ever since, craving flesh, looking for something to inhabit. Mastema is their commander. He organizes them. He directs them. He has authority over them in the way a general has authority over soldiers. And in the book of Jubilees, a Second Temple Jewish text found alongside the book of Enoch at Qumran, treated as authoritative scripture by the community that preserved the Dead Sea Scrolls, Mastema is the adversary figure who operates on earth after the flood, testing humanity, accusing, executing judgment, filling the role that later tradition would assign to a single figure named Satan. Most people have never heard of him, but once you see him in the ancient texts, you cannot unsee him. Here is what happened in Jubilees chapter 10. Noah's prayer was answered. God commanded all the evil spirits to be bound, and Mastema came before God and said this, "Lord Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice. If none of them are left for me, I cannot execute the power of my will among the sons of men, for they are intended for corruption and leading astray before my judgment, because great is the wickedness of the sons of men." He argued that without agents on earth, he cannot perform his function. The adversary needs instruments. Without the evil spirits under his command, there is no one to execute the testing and corruption that Mastema was created to oversee. And God accepted this. He commanded that 9 parts, 90%, be bound in the place of judgment. But 1 part, 10%, was left free, active on earth, under Mastema's direct command. Think about what just happened. A leader of evil spirits stood before the throne of God, made a legal argument for why evil should remain on earth, and won. Not through rebellion, not through deception, through a negotiated concession that God himself agreed to. The adversary has a lease, and Mastema himself argued for it. This one negotiation resolves something that has troubled Christian theology for centuries. If the flood was God's judgment, if it wiped out the Nephilim, ended the corruption, reset the world, Why are evil spirits still here? Why does the New Testament assume they are present everywhere? Why do the Gospels show Jesus encountering them in every region he visits? Because of Jubilees 10. Because Mastema made his case and God agreed to a 90-10 split. The 90% are bound. The 10% operate on earth under a defined authority for a defined period of time until the day of the Great Judgment, when the lease expires and the remaining 10% gets recalled. Evil did not escape God's judgment after the flood. It was granted a temporary extension by negotiation for a stated purpose. This is not a story about God losing control. It is a story about a bounded adversarial authority operating within a cosmic legal framework that has an end date built into it from the beginning. Now, who is Satan in this framework? Start with the word itself. Satan is not a name. In the oldest Hebrew texts, the word Satan, spelled shin, tet, nun, means accuser, adversary, one who opposes. It is a title, a function, a role, not a proper name. In the book of Job, it is the Satan with the definite article, the adversary, a member of God's divine council who appears before God, reports on his movements, and asks permission to test Job. He does not rebel. He does not act independently. He operates within a permitted authority. He is a council member with a specific prosecutorial function. In Zechariah chapter 3, the same figure appears. The accuser is standing at the right hand of Joshua, the high priest, ready with charges. His function is to point to Joshua's spiritual uncleanness, to argue before God that Joshua has no right to serve. God rebukes the accuser and clears Joshua. But notice what just happened. The accuser did not rebel. He did not attack. He presented a case before a judge. That is the role. That is what the word means. The singular, named rebel angel Satan of later Christian theology, cast out of heaven before time began, Lord of hell, eternal enemy of God, is a later development, a theological synthesis that takes centuries to form. And the figure who builds the bridge between the council member of Job and that later synthesis is Mastema. Before Mastema, the great villain of 1 Enoch is Azazel. He is the watcher who taught humanity to forge weapons of war, who taught women the arts of ornamentation and seduction, who spread corruption so deeply across the earth that God declares in 1 Enoch chapter 10, "Ascribe all sin to Azazel. He is the one most responsible. His punishment is total." The archangel Raphael is sent to the desert of Dudael. He digs a pit. He throws Azazel face down into it. He covers him with jagged rocks and seals the opening. And Azazel waits there in darkness until the day of the great judgment, when he will be cast into fire forever. Azazel cannot roam. He cannot test. He cannot accuse. He cannot be the adversary active on earth in the time of the New Testament. The book of Enoch seals him completely and permanently, which means that if you are looking for the adversary moving through the earth after the flood, after the imprisonment of all the watchers, Azazel is not the answer. Mastema is. Once you know Mastema, the ancient texts open in a completely new way. In Jubilees, when Pharaoh's heart is hardened during the plagues of Egypt, it is Mastema who does the hardening. When something tries to kill Moses at a lodging place on the road back to Egypt, one of the most disturbing and debated verses in all of Exodus, a passage that has confused scholars for centuries, Jubilees names the agent, Mastema. And when God commands Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac on the mountain, Jubilees says it was Mastema who proposed the test to God, the same way the accuser in Job proposed afflicting Job. Mastema moves between the divine counsel and the physical world. He tests, he accuses, he executes judgment. And the book of Jubilees does something precise and deliberate. It takes the violent and ambiguous moments in the Hebrew Bible, the moments that make readers uncomfortable because they seem to implicate God directly in cruelty, and it names the actual agent every single time. Mastema. Across the Second Temple period, the 4 centuries between the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, the adversary concept is developing, multiplying, and converging. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, we meet Belial, the Prince of Darkness, commanding the Sons of Darkness in the War Scrolls' cosmic conflict against the Sons of Light. Other scrolls name Mastema directly as the chief over the evil spirits. Others name Samael. The same underlying archetype appearing under different names across different communities, a commanding adversary with authority over the spiritual forces that oppose God's people. And then, gradually, the definite article disappears. The accuser, the council member of Job, becomes Satan. The title becomes a name. The function crystallizes into a single person. By the time of the New Testament, the synthesis is complete. One named adversary, one enemy, but the architecture beneath that name, the bounded authority, the negotiated lease, the defined end date, that is still the Mastema framework. It is still Jubilees 10. Hidden now under a proper noun that most people assume was always there. Read the New Testament with this framework, and familiar passages open completely. When Jesus is led into the wilderness to be tempted, this is the adversary function operating. The accuser performing his ancient role, testing the Son of Man before his ministry begins. The same procedure Mastema performed with Abraham on the mountain. The same function the council member performed with Job on the ash heap. In Luke chapter 10, Jesus says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." This is not a description of an ancient pre-creation rebellion. It is a declaration about the present moment. The adversary's authority is being revoked. The lease that Mastema argued for and won in Jubilees 10 is being cancelled. And from the previous episode, the Gadarene demons. They beg not to be sent to the abyss before the time. They know the expiration date. They have been on the borrowed time their chief secured since the day he stood before God after the flood and made his case. And they know with precision that it is running out. Here is the full picture. In what Enoch, there is no single Satan figure. There are multiple adversary figures with distinct roles and distinct fates. Azazel, the greatest watcher villain soul, is permanently sealed underground, waiting for fire. The dead Nephilim spirits roam the earth, craving bodies. In the book of Jubilees, Mastema emerges as their chief, a commanding adversary who negotiated his authority from God himself, organized the Nephilim spirits, and has been operating on earth with defined, bounded, time-limited authority ever since the day after the flood. Across the Second Temple period, Mastema, Belial, Samael, and the accuser of Job converge into the singular Satan of the New Testament. The rebel angel, the Lord of Hell, the eternal enemy, that is a later theological development, a simplification of something far more layered. The oldest picture is this. Evil is a bounded function, negotiated, temporary, operating within a cosmic legal structure that God established and maintains. The adversary has a lease. He knows when it expires. He is not a rival to God. He is an authorized, time-limited adversary, and the day is coming when even that authorization ends. If this changed how you read the adversary in the Bible, subscribe to Enoch Unveiled and turn on notifications. Every week we explore the ancient texts your church never covered. The Book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Jubilees. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.